And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Marshall Communications webinar series titled How to Write Better Subject Lines. And we're really excited about this one. I'm Greg Glynn. I'm an account supervisor here at Marshall Communications.
And I'm Megan Crowder, account coordinator and social media strategist here at Marshall Communications.
Perfect. And for those of you who may be new to our webinar series, we are excited that you've joined us, whether you're from Maine or whether you're from New England or whether you're around the world. So thank you very much for tuning in today. We are Marshall Communications. We are a PR and marketing agency. We're based in Augusta, Maine, and we really specialize in being globally connected. And that's one of the reasons why we do these webinars, is that while we're Maine-based, we're also globally connected to the internet, obviously, and the power of video streaming, such as a webinar like this. And the other thing that we're known for, Meg, is the Marshall Plan.
Yes, so we are recognized for our Marshall Plan, which is a customized, comprehensive, and strategic marketing communications plan. And it's developed through an extensive research and a collaborative process to achieve measurable results for your business. And to learn more, you can visit marshallpr.com.
Perfect. And today's webinar, Meg, what do we have for?
Oh yeah, so today we're going to go over how to write better subject lines and get people to open your emails.
That's always nice, right? When someone actually opens your email. So we'll talk about that. But for those of you, again, who may be new, the format is pretty much 15 to 20 minutes of us presenting about a topic. Then we'll take about 10 minutes of your questions, so you can feel free to submit those through the question and answer icon on your screen. And this is really designed to be more of an intermediate course. We all know how to write emails, so it's not a beginner course. But at the end of the day, too, we do think there are some tips here that I think are going to be helpful. We also know that there are more advanced options for this as well. Like, we could do a whole thing. We could do 2 hours on media pitching and how to use subject lines for media pitching. So this one will be an intermediate class. We're glad you joined us, and we're ready to get started.
All right. So today we're going to go over the purpose of why you're here watching our webinar today, subject lines, and how to make that stand out, how to get people to actually click open into that email and respond. And we're going to go over subject lines for e-newsletters as well.
Yep. And then, of course, we will take your questions. I always enjoy writing those e-newsletter subject lines, because that is so important. If you wonder why your e-newsletter is not getting read or why that open rate couldn't be higher, I can tell you right now, subject lines are one of the best ways to get people to read it. So, all right, so what is the purpose of a subject line? Now, I recorded a Facebook Live video yesterday talking about, why would you use a subject line? What are some of the ways you can optimize it? So, the goal of a subject line is to really inform the person, or multiple people if you're writing a larger email that's got people copied on it, what the email is actually about. So if you want to get it read, you obviously want to write something engaging that's going to make them want to open it. It could be also a thread on a topic. So office party, would be one that people would continue to respond, whether they can make it or whether they can't make it or what they're bringing, and that kind of thing. And I always like to say, too, don't just keep responding. If you're going to change the subject of what the subject line is about, like the office party, and then you're like, oh, well, I actually have to pick up my dog, so I can't be there. Hey, has anyone ever tried this medication for their dog? And it's like, then you're talking about a totally different thing, and it still says office party. So if you're going to change the subject line, or if you're going to change the thread, write a new email and get people off there that don't really need to be on there. Setting up a meeting is another one. Obviously, hey, whether it's the automatic invite you might get from Outlook, or whether it's Google Calendar, what that looks like and how that might actually help get people to open your emails. And then also to get approval. I think about this a lot, where we have clients that, they need to open the email to approve the press release or to approve, a quote, whatever it may be, and we're on a deadline. So if you can put in that subject line by 2 p.m., you're going to get their attention much more than you would just saying press release. And then all of a sudden, no one reads it until tomorrow, and you're like, you didn't get back to me about the press release. So here we've got today 7 tips to make your subject line stand out. And take us through this first one.
All right. So the first thing that you want to focus on is, who are you sending this email to? You don't want to just randomly send out an email. You want to think who
that we call spam. Yeah.
You want to focus on who your target audience is. So when you are sending out those bulk emails, you want to think about who is going to read this and what can I do to grab their attention. So with a national email list, you want to make sure that you're thinking about all of those factors. So if you're going to send out, like this example right here, outdoor apparel, something about outdoor apparel to a national email list, you don't want to say sale on warmest winter coats when it's not winter on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So you want to think of that too.
Yep, absolutely.
And then you also want to make sure that you create separate email groups for different.
Segmentation is big right now, and it's really important because, as Meg said, you don't want to open something that's not relevant to you. You know, the more you do that, the more you send out emails that aren't relevant to your audience, the more likely they are to unsubscribe. So that's important. Number 2 is making it personal. And it's really important to use the person's first name when you can. Constant Contact, MailChimp, all of these email blast systems allow you to put that in the Dear line or the Hi, Greg. You can actually format that into your email. So if you're not doing that, highly recommend you do it, even for a newsletter. You know, they know that they're getting blasted. They know that everybody else is getting the newsletter. But actually seeing your name really actually introduces chemicals in your brain that make you happy. So it's important to be able to tap into that. Also using the words you, your, or your, and this will help someone realize that this is actually for them, and they'll feel as though that they should be opening it and that it's actually some really personal type of information for them. So an example like we put here, you won't believe this, or you're about to learn the coolest thing. Your time is available, so we'll keep this short, versus if we just said, check this out, that's not going to be as engaging as, you know, you or your. So keep that in mind. Building trust with the people you're emailing. So again, this gets back to, if you're just going to be blasting out emails and you're going to be potentially spamming people, that's really not going to get the job done. So if they get too many emails from you that aren't relevant, they're just going to hit subscribe or unsubscribe at that point. So that's something to think about.
And you want to make sure that you're sending it to the correct person.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to want to write an email to Greg and accidentally say, hi, Bob, or...
Yeah, that's true. Well, a lot of times, too, even in those programs, you have to be careful because sometimes it'll be last name, first name, or it may be full name. So if I wrote, Dear Meg Crowder, you're going to be like, okay, this was totally generated, you know? So that's something to keep in mind, too. All right, emojis.
All right. So nowadays, you don't want to just see words anymore. Right, Greg?
Not good enough.
You want to see little emojis, so little icons. And this is mostly because millennials love seeing these. And if your target audience is millennials, maybe try throwing in a few emojis and see if your emails get open more, your open rate goes up. So 36% of millennials think that communicate their thoughts and feelings better than just text. So, and these are fun too. So you want to just make sure that it's relevant to your subject line, but it's a good way to grab attention too.
Absolutely. Majority of people obviously feel too that I think resonates with them. They're used to texting. They're used to seeing that. So I think that also kind of taps into what they're familiar with. They might think it's funny or comical. So a great point. And that also, obviously, the example there from Domino's Pizza. By the way, I say this about social media all the time. If you want to learn how to do social media or what some of the best tips and tricks are out there, the pizza places are really trying to be front and center on that. And so that's why this is a really good example. All right, let's test different approaches for number 4. So using A/B testing. So this is an example of where you'd send out one email to one audience that would have a different subject line, and then you a different subject line with the other audience. And the one that with emojis gets a better open rate, especially if you know that it's a younger audience that you're sending that email blast to. Worth definitely doing, versus if you have an older crowd, they might not even really understand what that is, and it may be a little bit off-putting for them, so that's important to know. Then the other thing too is to split up your list. So obviously we've talked about this, segmentation is so important, but it's really important that you're also sending the exact same email to both lists, because you know, changing the subject line is what we're measuring here. So when you get clicks on other things in the email, that's not what we're looking for. We're actually looking on just the open rate based on the email subject line. Following words actually release the body chemical dopamine. I'm sorry to go doctor on you here, but the thing. It actually can send signals to other nerve cells. I learned about this the other day. There are 4 words that will do this. Now, announcing, finally, and my favorite, free. Because these words actually get people excited in their brains, and you'll see that. Now, free is also one of those words that used to be off limits, Meg. It would actually trigger spam filters, and that would cause more problems because your email wouldn't get through. But since those days, they have said that if you're not saying free with about 400 exclamation points afterwards, the word free, maybe 1 exclamation point, and that's it, will actually still get delivered. So that's good news for those people who like free stuff and who doesn't. Go ahead.
Now, if I see free in my inbox and it says free in an emoji with like a pizza, I'm going to open it.
Absolutely. It's a great example. So subject lines make a big difference, and obviously those words can make a big difference as well.
All right, and you also want to test different things out. Make it fun, so try some emojis, but you also can try like things like typos or unusually spelled words. So for example, like, hello, you won't want to miss this deal, or oops, did you forget to look at this email? So that's going to grab attention. People are going to be like, hey, what's that? And they're going to open it. Also, looking for donations, mention the person's name in the email, and that makes it, a lot more personal.
Meg, we need your help.
Yes.
We need you to donate the hurricane, everything like that. That way it can really help get somebody to pay attention. So.
Grab my attention and be like, oh, I do want to help.
Yeah, exactly.
So you also want to use words that are valuable, like alert and secret, and just anything that's really going to be personal.
Yeah, and make them feel like there's value there. Like, oh, I should really read that, because if I don't read that alert, I might miss out, and then I could miss something really important. So that's what that's all about. And then also words like quick, easy, and simple, we want them to make it feel like it's easy. I mean, I remember the campaign with Staples, we make it easy. That was a huge campaign for them. It was really successful because people who would want to open this email because it's going to be really hard and confusing to read. No, I'm not going to open that email, versus open this email. We've got easy ways to, figure out how to empty your dishwasher faster. It's a lot of things like that that just can make it a lot better.
And as you know, too, your email inbox is probably full.
Oh,
so you want to make sure that you're cutting through that clutter and really standing out with your emails if you want them opened.
Absolutely.
What you do.
Absolutely. All right, so let's keep it short when we do subject lines. I think this is something that sometimes people forget. If you can't read the full subject line, like it might get cut off, people are going to be less likely to read it because they can't see what it says completely. So if you can't get your point across, then you're less likely to have that email get opened. Also, they say that good rule, no more than 55 characters. So those of you familiar with obviously writing for Twitter when it used to only be 140 characters, it makes me feel old to even like say that. But anyway, keeping it short and simple is really important. Again, you want to fit in that email subject line space. And don't miss out on the pre-header text too. This is one thing that Constant Contact and a lot of these email service providers now have is a secondary line that will allow you to write something else that will maybe bolster the chances of someone opening that email. So it could be something that supports your subject line. So if you didn't have a chance to get it all across in the 55, we're going to give you a few more, and you put it in the subheader, and you should be able to at least get some more of your points across. And then also short 1 or 2 word subject lines I think are really good too. Sometimes it can stand out more because you get these lines going across your inbox, and when one is a lot shorter than the other, it's much more likely to stand out. So I think that's important. All right, so let's talk about tip number 6, which is, should you ask questions? Question mark. Yes, the answer is because a lot of people actually, when they see a question mark, it draws their eyes to the words, and it forces them to think that they actually have to think about what the question is. So if you can get that person to pay attention to your subject line, the better chances are you're going to get them to pay attention to your email. So a few years ago, question mark again was considered a no-no because it was kind of like fitting in the family with the exclamation points and all that. It was an indicator that might be spam. Well, now the question mark and also punctuation, other ones, are becoming more acceptable. And you don't want to try and use it too often because every subject line that has a question mark that you send out, that's going to get relatively frustrating and annoying. So you want to use it sparingly, but it's also, as you found, I know working in social media, right? Questions are king. All right, so number 7, creating some urgency.
All right, so you want to make sure that you're using words such as today, time, deadline. Can you open this now? Things like that. That way, it's creating that time and that urgency, like Greg was talking about earlier. If you give a specific time, can you respond to this by 2? Then you're going to get that response. And you also want to indicate if it is important. So maybe adding, urgent, or if you really need someone to open it as soon as possible, please. Just putting those right words to really grab that attention and create that sense of urgency.
Yeah, you see this actually a lot now with colleges when they're doing fundraising efforts, is they'll actually come up with these blitz campaigns where they need to raise a certain amount of money in a certain amount of time. It could be 72 hours. So then what they're doing is over that 72 hours, they're sending out 48 hours left to raise, $2 million. And then it'll be like 24 hours. And then there'll be like 1 hour left. And again, they're trying to compel you by creating that sense of urgency. And a lot of times you'll see urgency in marketing emails. They want you to act now. And the same thing could be said for the subject line. So
now, do I want to use more than one exclamation point when I'm really excited about something and I really want you to open it? Great.
Unfortunately, no. As excited as we may all be about this subject line or about what's in this email, you really have to stay away from those multiple exclamation points. It's going to hurt with those spam filters. So contain the excitement in the subject line, but go nuts in the email. So, all right. Bonus slide for you today. So those of you out there that are in our world where you're dealing with public relations and maybe it's media relations and you do media pitching, you are always wondering, why can't I get someone to respond? Why are they not opening my emails? And one of the things we wanted to include today, since Meg and I, we both do media pitching, is we felt like it's really important that you understand some tips to get your pitches read. So, and I also want to shout out Michael Smart here for the work that he has done with us in this area and has really helped us as an agency to improve the way we think about media pitching, and subject lines are certainly a part of that. So, that being said, I did some pitching recently for my good friend Adrian Brochu. And Adrian is a 71-year-old who actually loves to move rocks and make mountains. He's got 2 mountains, Ira Mountain and Quill Hill. By the way, little plug for Adrian here. They are great during the fall foliage season. They are at peak probably right now. So if you're looking for fall foliage, go see Adrian at those 2 mountains. But he also, he makes pizza ovens. So when you say in a subject line, a 71-year-old who makes mountains and pizza ovens, now I've got your attention, and you've got the fact of the age, you've got the mountains, the fact that he can actually make a mountain. Now, obviously, he's not literally piling up the dirt and making a mountain, but the sense is that you can see what we're going after. You want to actually captivate their attention. And then how do mountains and pizza connect? That's an interesting correlation. So that's going to help you get that email read. Versus if you just said, hey, you got to check out this story about a 71-year-old. That's not going to get as well read, obviously, as that. All right, reference the section of the publication when you actually do the pitch. So for example, when we pitch to like Maine Biz here, which is the business publication in Maine, they have a section that's called On the Record. If I reference on the record in the subject line, the person who's reading that email is going to go, oh, okay. They're aware of our magazine. They know what we put together. They know about that specific section. I'm going to actually open this email because it sounds very relevant to what I work on. And you also have to get to the right person, right, Meg? You can't just send the wrong email. And it doesn't matter what subject line. It may be free pizza, but that's about it. Would get the wrong person, to open the email. So. And then we also, just like we were talking about earlier, when we were talking about personalizing it, you've got to know their name. If you're not using the reporter's name or using the producer's name, that's going to really be a turnoff for them, and they're going to tell it's an email blast, or you're sending out copy and paste jobs, right?
They'll delete it.
Yeah, if they even open it.
They won't even open it.
And then also we also use media advisory in all caps. This is a way in the industry, and it's acceptable here, in the sense that you're letting the media know about something ahead of time. It's a media advisory. They should want to open it regardless of what it is. Obviously, hopefully you've got another good content following the words media advisory to get them to open it. but you can use caps there in that situation to try to get that email open. So some really good media pitching tips for you.
I was just going to add
Yeah.
in too, when you're doing a follow-up on a media pitch, you want to make sure that you're changing that subject line. They don't want to see,
Okay.
forward or reply. Change the subject line. Maybe if it's the same subject line, you can use the subject line, just get rid of that forward FW.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that can be a tip off too.
Yeah.
All right, so we have now got time for our questions for our viewers. So if you would like to ask a question about subject lines, we ask you to certainly submit those to our question and answer features, which you can see there. There's a Q&A button, and we will be able to get to those. I'm going to check to see what we've got going on right now for questions. And let's see what we got.
And while we're waiting for our questions, if you liked joining us and hearing from both Greg and I today, we will also be having our next webinar on November 14th at 3 p.m. It's a Wednesday, as usual, for our webinar series. And we're going to talk about everything to do with Twitter. So tips on using Twitter and how to really leverage that audience there.
And so that will be a really good one too. And I know, Meg, you do a lot of Twitter work, so that'll be good to talk about. So we will take questions. If you've got them, let us know. But in the meantime, we also want to let you know you can always subscribe to our monthly e-newsletter at marshallpr.com. And that's where you can find out a lot of times about these webinars, which I know many of you probably read yesterday's that went out to remind you that we had this webinar coming today, so always very, very helpful. And then also we have Nancy's new podcast. She's excited about it. I'm excited about it. I helped produce it, line up all the guests. We've got some amazing guests lined up coming up in the next few months, and you'll want to make sure you tune into that. Please go there, check it out. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play. We've got all your options there for your favorite podcast players. And like I said, some great guests coming up. And those are weekly podcasts. So you can download those at any time and listen to them in the car. You can listen to them while you drive to work even. They're perfect. So we encourage you to check that out. Other than that, today, it seems like we've covered everything for everyone on subject lines. So high five for that, Meg. And it looks like our next webinar, again, as Meg mentioned, is coming up on November 14th, 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking all about Twitter and tips for using Twitter. And there's so many tips. We'll try to get it into 20 minutes for you. We'll see what we can do. But until then, want to say thank you for joining us. Again, for my presentation partner, Meg Crowder, I'm Greg Glynn. We're glad you could tune in. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.